So in this video, I wanted to share some very important details I recently learned about Jingyuan, his builds, and his best teams. You see, being a content creator and all, I did my due diligence and researched everything I could about him, even though I personally don't own him, because I'm broke. And so during my deep dive in the YouTube, I found this video by Mr. Poke, who goes over a CNN analysis of Jingyuan and his best team compositions that really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I never really considered before then. Although I had a general idea of how he worked, I didn't really realize how demanding he actually was and how much your choice of teammates influenced both his game plan and how you built him. And so with Mr. Poke's permission, in this short video, I wanted to condense and share what I've learned so you too can gain some insight on the thought process behind building an endgame ready Jingyuan team. But in order to understand the reasoning behind what I'm about to share, it's important to understand the 3 fundamental issues Jingyuan has as a character. And real quick, when I say he has issues, it's not like I'm saying he's bad. There's no way I can call this bad. But much like every other character in Star Rail, there's flaws we need to understand so that we can later take care of them with proper gearing and investment. But anyways, to understand what these issues might be, we need to first go over his game plan. To start, Jinny's talent essentially summons an independent party member for your team called the Lightning Lord, or Lenny for short. Shoutouts to Braxphone. Now, Jing's general goal is to get as many stacks as possible using his E and his ultimate, as each stack gives Lenny more speed and adds more hits to his AoE attack. Putting it simply, more stacks equals more damage and the more times he'll do it. And finally, after Lenny attacks, Jing will go back down to 3 stacks, restarting the process all over again. Now, what's important to note here though, is that thanks to Jing's A2 trace, when he gets to 6 stacks, he will give Lenny a 25% crit damage buff for his next attack. Which means at minimum, you should try to have at least 6 stacks every rotation, or else you miss out on a lot of potential damage. In other words, he needs to use his E twice before Lenny's turn comes up, and his ultimate whenever he can to max out at 10 stacks. And if you consider the fact that 3/4 of Jingyuan's damage is from Lenny's follow-up attacks, it's definitely not a bottom line that you want to miss. So now that you're acquainted with what he wants to do, let's identify the problems that we need to solve. For starters, maintaining Lenny is actually pretty difficult. Because he gets both stronger and faster with stacks, it's not actually the simplest thing to keep getting 6 stacks every rotation. If you don't have enough speed, Lenny actually overtakes Jingyuan after a single E. In fact, according to calculations, he needs 140 speed on his own in order to consistently maintain his optimal 2E rotation. This means he needs a staggering 41 speed from relics. And seeing that he also needs crit and attack stacks on his relic, adding that much speed on top of it is a pretty hefty task. Next up is his glaring energy issues, as his ultimate is one of the more expensive ones at 130 energy. Without killing anything and without his E4, it takes an average of 5 turns to build enough energy to use it. Seriously, because his ult costs 130, after 4 E's, he's literally 5 energy off. That's some serious bullshit. And finally, because he exclusively wants to use his E while his ultimate is down, he is incredibly skill point hungry as his Q doesn't build stacks. So because of this, he's always going to go skill point negative, limiting who can be on his team and requiring anyone else to be picking up the slack. Whew, okay, now that we established that he needs speed, he has energy issues, and he's skill point hungry, let's finally talk about the best gear to give him and the best teammates to place him with. Starting off with the most recommended support, Jingyuan solves almost all of his problems herself. I mean, there's a reason why she's on his banner. For starters, her attack buffing skill lasts 3 turns, which means that in an optimal E to E rotation, it lasts long enough for Jingyuan to still have the buff for when Lenny's turn comes around. Also, because it lasts 3 turns, she can use her Q to generate skill points while the buff is still active, getting up to 2 skill points per rotation to make up for exactly what Jing has just spent. And finally, probably the most important aspect to her kit, her ultimate gives him energy, which lowers the number of turns he needs to build it from 5 to 3. So in short, Jingyuan needs Tingween, as Tingween lets Jingyuan do Jingyuan things. Why'd I write that? Now there's still a couple things we need to consider with this pairing, because even with just Tingween on the team, we still have the same speed issues. However, because he'll have his ultimate more often, assuming an easier Tingween, his speed requirement will slightly go down from 140 to 134. Also, because Tingween wants to be faster than her DPS so she can buff them before they start doing their thing, she will need more than 134 speed as well. So for this composition, it's recommended to give Jingyuan speed boots and an attack rope. And for Tingween, they recommend Planetary Rendezvous for a light cone because of their type synergy. And for her relics, they recommend as much speed and ER as possible with 4-piece Musketeer and 2-piece Flee the Ageless. But now before we move on to the next character, I need to establish that Tingween is now a permanent addition to the team. You see, the theory crafters that made this spreadsheet ran simulations on which supports and combinations of the 3 worked the best with Jingyuan. And well, Tingween was the best scorer in all of them. In my honest opinion, Tingween is mandatory on Jingyuan's team, and while it is possible to run him without her, it seriously feels like MiHoYo designed a kit around Tingween's abilities. And while she can't necessarily fix our speed issues, let's move on to the most accessible option who can. Asta basically has one job on the team, and it's just to use her speed granting ult as often as possible. Essentially, her game plan is to stay skill point positive and build enough energy to ult during Jingyuan's turn for the maximum effect. Seriously, there's not much to talk about, this is all she needs to do. In fact, because Asa's ultimate is so strong, you actually only need to make sure Jingyuan has 115 speed, drastically lowering his ridiculous requirement even further. What this really means though is that you can afford to give him attack boots, as 16 speed from substats is fairly easy to accomplish. Now there's really only one thing to consider with Asta, and it's that even if we give her the max amount ER possible, her ultimate will still take at least 3 turns to charge, meaning that there will always be one turn where you won't have a speed buff. Now moving on to her gear, since her whole job is just to have her ultimate up as often as possible, her endgame gear requirements are pretty reasonable, as she just wants as much ER and speed as possible. From this spreadsheet, they recommend any 4-piece relic set that you want, 2-piece sprightly Von Walk for your planar set, speed boots, an ER rope, and the 3-star light cone meshing cogs for its insane energy regen at S5. And again, there's not really much to say, as running a comp with Asta and Jingyuan is incredibly easy to manage and fairly cheap in regards to gear. But for a more premium option, Bronya is also an amazing fit for Jingyuan. Even though her ease damage buff won't apply to Lenny's attacks, the extra turn and cleanse it provides will make sure that Jing will consistently get his stacks. In fact, looking at the DPS chart, she's actually the best character to run with Jingyuan, with 2 possible playstyles to try. Starting with the first comp, you can run what's called a slow Bronya team, in which you want Bronya to be the slowest character on the stack so that she can E Jingyuan after he takes his turn. Not only is it a pretty simple comp to understand, but it's also pretty easy to gear. Like the Asta team, just keep Jing's speed at 115 and Bronya's way below that. However, you might have already realized something important, and it's that the skill cost of every rotation is insanely high, as the rotation of Jing to Bronya to Jing costs 3 skill points. In fact, unless you have 4-piece passerby on your healer, this rotation doesn't even allow Jingyuan the caster buff on Jingyuan on the opening turn. And unfortunately, the only way you can really alleviate this is by getting E1 Bronya. Yeah, good luck. But now let's talk about Fast Bronya, whose goal is now to utilize her talent's effect to get a basic attack off while still being able to E Jingyuan before Lenny's turn, effectively making her skill point neutral. We want Bronya to be as fast as possible and have Jingyuan be as slow as possible so it's easier to ensure that she goes after him. And because of this, we can actually forget about any speed requirement altogether, meaning that we can completely ignore speed and give him attack stats instead. However, there is one pretty major downside. Although you won't have to beg MiHoYo for an E1 Bronya, according to this data, you'll need 145 speed to consistently keep this up. Yep, we're back here again. And now for both Bronya builds, they recommend 4-piece Eagle, 2-piece Sprightly Von Walk, an ER Rope, and Speed Boots for the Fast Bronya only. And for both styles, they recommend her 5-star Light Cone, The Battle Isn't Over, for the ER and extra skill points from using her ultimate. Or you can use Dance 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 to make sure that Jing and Bronya stay ahead of Lenny's turn. So in summary, if you want the highest possible return on your Jingyuan team, you'll also need pretty high investment, as the more relic-friendly Bronya needs an Eidolon, and the less gacha-focused Bronya needs amazing relics. So Jingyuan is an amazing AoE damage dealer, but he really does need the right teammates to enable him. Really, after reviewing how much an influence his teammates have on not only his playstyle, but his builds as well, it really did open my eyes to how deep this team building rabbit hole can really go. And again, if you want a longer explanation of this sheet, because I'm sure I missed something, go check out Mr. Poke's video. He's doing some great work over his channel and you really should give it a watch. But with that out of the way, I'll see you in the next one.